Hi there. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hi,
Paul.
can you hear me? All right,
Hi.
good.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, good, good. I'll just test this.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Good evening, Paul. Thank you so much for coming on board. I know last time around when we met some 5 months back, things were different. We were out on a tennis court. We were out, doing a lot of things outside. But now it's totally different. But how's been life with you, your family, friends? Hope everybody's safe.
Yes, everything's been. I think Thailand seemed to have gotten through it pretty well, actually, with numbers and what have you. And things are almost back to normal, well, as normal as they can be.
Wow, that's great. Okay. I mean, because unlike India, I guess it's getting worse. But I'm sure we'll all come out of
Yes,
this in some time. Just that we need to, hold on for some more time.
yes. Let's hope so. Yes, yes.
But Paul, it's really, I just wanted to ask you, for a person like you who spends most of the time on a tennis court, with the kids, with the professionals, with the amateurs. But how has been this day? Because I'm sure it's something that you've never experienced even in your, entire years of experience, giving insight. So how do you actually manage? I'm sure you would have been still interacting with your kids in some way or the other. So how did you manage actually? Not only yourself, but also your
Hmm.
kids who had been on a tennis court for all this while.
Well, I don't, at the present, I don't have groups anymore. I've been working mainly with individuals. So,
Uh,
they've disappeared into their different parts of the world. And yeah, we keep in touch. And I guess they're still doing their things. I have one young guy from Australia who plays every day. So I guess it depends which part of the world we're talking about. But personally, it's been a really good opportunity. Um, to do some of the things I've wanted to do for a long time. And
oh,
one of them
really?
is
Wow.
things of this nature. So
Hmm.
for me, it's been, this has been a godsend, really. Um, yeah, things of this nature, like webinars and just talking to other coaches and players and things like that. It's something I've wanted to gravitate to for a while now. I haven't had the opportunity.
Yeah, yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it's just maybe you just took a step back and again try to reinvent yourself as a coach, or maybe in some other way also. I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, sure. Yeah. So Paul, I'm sure a lot of the viewers out here in India already know you because you have been associated with Indian tennis for decades, now. And but I'm sure a few of them might not know as well as they would have liked to. So I'd just like to introduce you, to those people who might not know, you as a tennis coach or also as a person. So yeah, so Paul Dale, he's a New Zealander, but he's now well and truly settled in Thailand. And his long association with Indian tennis goes way back in the 1990s, where he was an active coach with Vijay Amritraj's brainchild, Britannia Amritraj Academy, which we so fondly call back. And from then onwards, even till now, he has been a traveling coach with our Indian double star, Divij Sharan. And yeah, so it's been still going strong with him when it comes to Indian tennis. And at a different level, he also coached the former world number 9, Paradorn Srichaphan. So yeah,
Mm.
so he has seen different players at different levels. So obviously he's seen a lot of players, at different levels, be it at a lower age group or be it a professional. So Paul, back to you. So the whole entire agenda of me trying to get you on board here is not only to, of course, enrich our own knowledge in terms of the tennis expertise that you already have been offering to Indian tennis, but of course to enhance this. But apart from that, of course, one key thing that I would like to know from you is the fundamentals of tennis, because when we talk about a lot of kids nowadays, not only nowadays, it's been like this for throughout. I mean, kids during the formative years, they go through different coaches, different playing patterns, different players who give different information to them. And
Mm.
obviously, for a kid, it often maybe gets complicated because too many information at times is also, I guess, not good, right? So for you, when you actually coach your kids whatever. How do you actually, what is fundamentals of tennis for you? I'm just trying to understand, because it's the first team and that we're trying to touch upon. That's what I really thought that could be apt, to start off with, because we've got so many young kids here. So how would you really, what according to you would be, what we call the fundamentals of tennis, the basic, the foundation, so to say. Yeah.
Hmm. Well, first of all, the fundamentals that I work with are really, really important in the coaching I do, because as every player comes through the gate, as it were, I have to look at them, analyze, and then work out a plan to improve them. So without a solid foundation thought process, it can get a bit confusing. But so for many years, I've worked with what I call my fundamentals. There's 3 of them. And without going through them at the moment, I think one of the things that has to be understood is that there is this mythical term fundamentals throughout the tennis world, all over the world. Everywhere you go, you can be standing at a courtside watching a tournament, and you might overhear someone say, "Oh, that player has great fundamentals."
Right. Yes.
And consequently, if you see someone playing very poorly, you can also hear someone say, "Oh, terrible fundamentals. They need to work on their fundamentals."
Right. It again boils down to fundamentals, term fundamentals, right? Yeah.
Yes, but the crazy thing is, find me the list of fundamentals, because none exists. And so it's a term thrown around very often and by many, but I don't think anybody's ever seen the list of fundamentals and what they are. So, and and if you have 100 coaches, it's a good thing that they don't have all the same area. It makes the game and the coaching of the game interesting. But I think it's important for any coach out there, and as you're tying the player into this, for any player out there to base their training on someone's fundamentals, and not be sort of thrown 1,000 things in the first month of training, so that it gets very confusing. Mm-hmm. Now, I think fundamentals are really, really important for this reason. If they are fundamental, and that's the term, fundamental, if they're fundamental to your game, then they will fix all the ailments that you have. But if they're not fundamental, you're going to waste a lot of time dealing with things here and there that aren't going to affect your game to the same level. So when I've gone through and tried to devise my fundamentals, and there are 3 of them, I've made sure over the years that they work very effectively, or I've thrown them out, or I've tweaked them, adapted them so that they are extremely effective. Because by the nature of a fundamental, it must be extremely fundamental to your game.
Right. Yes. So when you talk of fundamentals, to what level does it go for? Because there are different age group, right? Now, you will have a kid like 5-year-old coming to your academy, or you would have a personal coach then. So how does that fundamental be different to a guy who has already crossed that stage of being fundamental or whatever? Because, for example, say I'm a 18-year-old kid, playing tennis and trying to go to the next level of professional, trying to play professional tennis. But will it be okay for you to change my fundamentals that I already had, say, when I actually started being coached by somebody, at 5-year-old, coach those fundamentals? So will it really not affect my game if you really change all of a sudden, or, how is it?
Well, a fundamental by definition should improve your game. And if it doesn't, if the player is basically reached a plateau and not progressing, they're probably in need of something. And again, just to define what this word fundamental means, a fundamental should be relevant to a 6-year-old beginner and a world number 1. That's one of the definitions of a fundamental.
Okay.
One of the definitions is that you cannot take it out of the game. The game won't survive. You cannot play without. So if and this is, I think, a very good thing for coaches to hear. If it's not relevant to the 6-year-old or the world number one, it's not a fundamental.
Okay. Right. Yes.
The rest is technique. The rest
Correct.
is what I call cosmetic, which means the way it looks. But it's certainly, the rest is not a fundamental. If you need to adapt your approach to a player, either the 6-year-old or the world number one, then, and obviously there's differences in age and what they can cope with. But what I'm meaning is fundamentals are fundamentals. You cannot take them out.
Right.
It's like a human that's breathing. If you cut off the oxygen, they die. It doesn't matter if you're 6 or 96.
Yeah.
Oxygen is oxygen. We need it. It's a fundamental of the way we have to keep living.
Correct.
Tennis is the same thing. A fundamental in tennis has to be applicable to a 6-year-old and the world number one, or it is not a fundamental.
Okay. Okay. Got it. Also, at a higher stage, maybe you'll also talk about progression, right? I mean, when you talk about progression, for example, 18-year-old kid who was hitting a forehand with a strong forehand, but at the same time, if his fundamentals were good in terms of the mindset, the mental condition, for example, when he was a 5-year-old, he would be playing those real match situation much better, right? The big points better. Those things will also come into consideration, I guess, at some point in time.
If fundamentals were done early.
Early, right? Yes. Yeah. Correct. Yes.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. No.
Right. Yes. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Well, if you know, and this is the key part about fundamentals. If a player can be introduced to solid fundamentals early on, then the game continues to grow. There are no plateaus. That's the other factor.
Yeah. So obviously, when you talk about fundamentals, it's not only about the skill set in terms of how he's hitting a volley or a backhand or a forehand, I guess. But I think tennis is played so much between the years, right? So I think that is also something that could be developed at an early age, or I mean, how is it like? Because or is it that we are stressing?
Yeah, no,
giving too much
absolutely.
Yeah.
No. My take on mental training is it should happen on the first day. Okay. Again, with the 6-year-old. Yeah.
Really? Oh.
Because absolutely. I think we will do a future talk on this, on the mental side of it. But in my mind, why would you start a player early, teaching them stroke mechanics, and wait till they become good, and then try and introduce some mental, some fortitude in their brain when they strike competition and stress, decision making. I'm a big believer in starting that right from the start.
Right. Yes.
Putting a player, create technique is only a small part of tennis, and the bigger part in my mind is actually the mental side, and that's why we have an epidemic around in the tennis world of people saying, "I'm playing great on the practice court, but when I get to the match, I can't handle it." And it's because of that fade where we're teaching players strokes. And not introducing mental training, decision making, playing under stress, all that stuff early.
Yeah. So no wonder we see the top players coming out of those crunch situation, like being a break point down and then serving an ace. So I think that's where mental fortitude plays well, because they already had that base set right when they were young, probably.
Yes, well, in a lot of cases, players are sort of born with it because of something like the family environment or just their mental makeup when they're born. And let's call them the 5%. But what about the other poor 95%? We're all good people, and the other 95% don't get that addressed.
Right, yeah.
So that
it has
to
to
me,
be cultivated, yeah.
Oh yes, it has to be taught. And in the 95%, it has to be introduced and taught. And I feel very sorry. I sometimes, when I watch matches, I see very good players. I mean, literally at, let's say at ITF junior level, because at the ATP WTA level, most of the players already have this mental side sorted out. That's how they got there. That's why they are there, and they have come above the others.
Right, yeah.
But at ITF level, where you have a lot of very talented shot makers, but you see 95% of the draw is having problem mentally. And so why was that not introduced right in the very beginning and developed along with the forehand and the backhand and the serve?
Yeah, and I'm sure they deserve that, especially when typically a tennis player, even at the ITF level, they, you know, burn themselves out for 6 hours under the sun. So why not you just, you know, have maybe half an hour, 1 hour mental training, you know, and where everything else is sorted out.
Yes. Well, yeah, I normally, I mean, I put it all together in the same pot. So if I'm working, if I have a player come to me and having trouble, just imagine with a wide forehand, I can technically see why that is happening. But there's no point in me fixing it technically and then sending him away and saying good luck, because under pressure, how does that hold up? And so during that lesson, once the player, he or she, begins to understand it technically, then I will immediately introduce it to stress. Immediately, stress is the oven that bakes the cake. So you don't make a cake and then leave it on the shelf unbaked.
Right.
So it's not like technique and their mental training over here somewhere. It's together.
Yeah.
The only way because you're trying to build responses and the ability to act under pressure quickly.
Correct. So a good cake needs all the right ingredients, right?
Yes,
Right,
at the same
yes.
time.
Yeah, at the same time. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So, what I was trying to maybe do today, if it's okay. I mean, I think we were talking earlier, and I'd like to introduce maybe mental training another time. But I have I think a very valuable technical tip. One of my technical fundamentals. I have 3 technical fundamentals. I'd like to introduce one of them here because I think for all the young players out there, and probably not so young players, this would really make a big difference to their game. And I'll try and maybe explain why I think it's a fundamental, and then maybe explain a little bit about how it can be trained as well.
Sure, why not? Yeah.
All right. Well, I brought a video along. Let's see if I can.
Wow. Oh, you've done enough homework. I didn't know that.
Yeah. Let's see if I can. I'm technically savvy enough to. I think you'll have to let me share the screen again.
Sure.
In this video, it's we can see what the better players are doing.
Yeah.
And let's see. I can't see. Let's see. All right.
Can you?
I'll just reduce the screen a wee bit.
Yeah.
And this one. Oh dear. So
did I share the screen?
I'm just trying to, let me just find it here. Sorry. Okay, can you see that clearly?
Not yet, Paul.
How's that? Anything?
No, not yet. Yeah.
Is that better?
No, not yet.
Oh, yeah. How's that?
Okay, just try now.
All right, just try it now. There we are. Oh, we got it.
Yeah,
there we are. Sorry about that. There we go.
Yeah.
All right. So maybe what we'll do, I'll start this and we'll stop it every now and again. And if you have any questions, which I think may help the viewers as well.
Yes.
And
sure.
all right. So anyway, this is one of my 3 technical fundamentals, and I call it the ground for want of a better term. I wish I had a classier name for it, but it seems to sum up the whole topic. So let's just watch this for a second.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so just to what I'm trying to say here is, we talked about it earlier in the introduction, but tennis is a game of tremendous stress, decision making, quick decisions, execution, finishing points off, and things like that.
Right.
What I learned many years ago was that good fundamentals are like armor; they protect you from pressure. So that players playing, in a final at Wimbledon, tremendous pressure with crowd occasion and hundreds of millions of people watching on television. Good fundamentals protect you from pressure, and that's why they're so important. Now, what I'm going to do is watch a quick series of points, and you'll see just tennis at the top level on the decision making that has to occur.
Wow, you top two warriors. Right.
All right, now I think this is where we need to start looking at what I call the myths out there. Now, in order to understand a fundamental, I think we mentioned it also in the introduction, a fundamental is something you cannot take out of the game. If you take it out, you can't play. Now, let's look at the traditional, and you're welcome to jump in at any time and rebuke me on some of these things. But
Sure.
in my mind, backswing is not a fundamental because there are several times that you don't take a backswing. Times such as, a big server and you're returning and they serve at your body, you have no time. And often you're just blocking the ball and bunting the ball back on a returner serve. A half-court ball mid-court, a half volley, doesn't have a backswing. And very often volleys don't have backswings either. If they don't have them, it can't be a fundamental. And now the other one, footwork is not a fundamental. That might sound extremely odd, and how can you take it out? Well, it's not that it's not important. I'm not saying any of these things are not important. But try telling a wheelchair player to improve their footwork. Wheelchair players cannot interact with the ground through footwork. But what they do interact with is the wheels of their chair. And so it's not about footwork per se. It's about an interaction with ground. And the wheelchair tennis, I think, has been one of the real growth areas of tennis over the last couple of decades. It started as a bit of like a poor relation of tennis, but if you watch wheelchair players today, it's a dynamic game. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
And then the last point is that follow through is not a fundamental either. And when I say that, again, on many shots, fast, deep balls to your ground stroke, you may not need to follow through or want to follow through. Volleys again. Sometimes on return a serve, it's just a block. There is no follow through. So going back to the initial comment I made, if a fundamental is something that you cannot take out of the game.
Yeah. Okay. So what you're trying to say is that if I have understood, right, the interaction, the impact that you had with the ground is so very important, right? I mean, the way you, in a way, say communicate with the ground, if I could use the term,
yes, no, that's
very important.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, that's where I'm going with this. I'm going to try and say, I'm trying to present a true fundamental in that, let's imagine we have primary and secondary type techniques. Backswing, follow through, and footwork are secondary. They are not primary because we can take them out and on many different options, we don't use them. So in the case of ground, which I'm going to now address, you need ground on every occasion. Now, what I have here is basically a collage of other sports, and we can just watch how other sports deal with this topic of ground. I'll take this through a bit further. So they're all important, but they're not vital.
Okay.
Ground is the source of all power and timing in all types of activity sports. Now, we're going to get a collage now. Just watch, if you can, how each sport relates to the ground.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay, so, we're starting to get into these different sports. There's the javelin, and obviously the legs and the ground had a tremendous part to play. Now, basketball also has correlations to tennis. What you're going to see now with Kobe Bryant, and you saw him on the first three-pointer, will be a slight lift in the feet, a little jump of a few inches, and then a very subtle wrist you'll see. And yeah, the ball travels tremendous distance and very accurately. All that timing starts in the ground. And I'll wind it forward again and just watch Kobe Bryant's feet and wrist on this shot. So how we interact with the ground, timing involves the successful, sorry, I'll just go back to that one again, sorry.
Sure.
Timing involves the successful synchronization of energy into the ball so that optimum power is achieved. Now, to put that into more common terms, we're creating timing and energy out of the soles of our feet in our relationship with the court. And that biomechanical energy travels through to our swing, which comes to the ball.
Okay, yeah. So basically you're trying to say that your preparation starts with the ground, right?
Yes.
Everything
starts in the ground.
In the ground, yeah. Be it tennis, be it for any sports, right? Basketball, like you showed.
Yes.
Yeah. So right from the jump.
I think what we could do is we could imagine that, for instance, Indian players are very familiar with the game of cricket. So let's imagine now a ball's hit to the boundary.
Yes.
And one of the fielders runs to the boundary, picks up the ball, and the first thing they do before they throw to the keeper is to spread their feet, because the distance is quite a lot.
Yeah.
And to get the power and the distance to the ball, the ground has to be prepared.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, please.
Carry on.
Yeah. Even for that matter, a bowler, his landing on the crease is so important. On the popping crease is so important when he delivers the ball, right? His impact on the ground with his foot with his feet, basically, when he delivers the ball. That is so very important.
Yes, well, if you take the analogy of a cricket bowler, and particularly the pace bowler who's trying to generate more energy, look at the jump they take before they launch the ball.
Yeah.
So they come in from a runway, they come in at speed, they basically land and become airborne to generate more pace on the throw, on the pitch. So that's another analogy that I hadn't really thought of. But whereas the spin bowler often comes off the ground, but not in the same dynamic way, because speed is not their primary objective.
Yes, yes.
But with the pace bowler, they basically launch off the ground and are quite high. If you take a still photo of a pace bowler, they're quite high. They're very high in the air, and they will thunder that ball through from that sort of pent up energy. But that all comes from the ground.
Yes.
The arm is supplied with energy from the soles of the feet.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. That's true. Yeah.
All right. So we'll just wind this forward a little bit. So in tennis, we do the same thing. We utilize ground. And here's the saying that we came up with just before. A fundamental is something that cannot be taken out of the game. You can't play tennis without it. There are many things being taught that I termed a while back secondary, that are not fundamental. And again, why are fundamentals so important? Because if we have a problem, by going back to the fundamental, it will be fixed immediately. If we are a little bit vague on what is the fundamental, let's say it's timing, let's say it's power, whatever. If you're unsure of the fundamental that affects those conditions, you're going to be sort of searching around at all sorts of things, looking for remedies, and they won't work.
Right. Sorry, Paul, it might be a very vague or maybe a naive question. So when you're talking about somebody using ground more, for example, somebody got like a Rafa, right? Who I personally feel like, he really uses the ground more than the other players. When I'm talking about using the ground is like, the way he stamps the feet on the ground, he does it more than maybe a Roger Federer. But how does it?
Yes.
How does it really matter? I'm sure. I mean, Roger
Well,
Federer does it.
I think I hopefully as you watch this video and we talk about it today, all players actually, there's different forms of ground, but they all use it perfectly. It's just you have styles. And I think, that can be confusing to the eye. But some players, for instance, back in the 70s, 80s, Jimmy Connors was renowned for his, what they used to call double 90s, his knee bend, both knees bent at 90 degrees. Now that's very tiring and very excessive, but that was his style. But there are certain players, and I think Stan Wawrinka is one on a lot of his forehands, where he stands very rigid and upright. And so neither is better than the other. The fundamental is to interact with ground. It can be done with the toes, the feet, the knees, the calves, the thighs, all these things. What you see with some players, and I think Nadal's probably one of these guys, you see this lifting off the ground, and that is advanced ground. That's just simply, and even juniors within India, you'll see a lot of juniors lifting off the ground. And I think that what you have to understand is ground comes in many forms and many styles. It's a fundamental, but it can be done in different ways. Just like we write our signature always different. We can spell the word, but we write differently. It's lifting off is a signature. And I think Nadal, it looks very obvious, the ground and work, but all the rest, and I think you'll see examples coming up, where all the rest of the top players are still using ground to a large degree. They wouldn't be where they are without it.
Okay, great. Yes.
Right, so let's, I think we're going to now get into some of the more tennis ground examples.
Yeah, I
Right.
think.
So
Sorry. I think Roger Federer's backhand is a prime example of how he uses the ground, right? The way he
yes, yes.
lifts up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think actually, I think that the more you and the viewers will look at this, I just think that, in a lot of cases, we've been taught to look at the swing. Yeah, everything, all teaching revolves around the swing. The first
Swing.
lesson you ever get when you go to a tennis court is the grip and the swing.
Hmm.
And to me, that's just wrong. I mean, the
Okay.
first lesson should have been the ground.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and so you see that we're brought up looking at swing,
Correct. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think what I'm trying to show here is that all the top players have amazing ground, and this comment I have now on the screen, sending that energy too early or too late results in poor timing. Now, I want you to imagine maybe the instance of a player who has been brought up on the swing method, and their mindset is on backswings and follow-throughs. Now, when a ball comes to them, they're very much, their mind is very much focused in the swing path and pattern. And yet, if that ball becomes very deep or too fast or gives them no time, they're still taking a backswing. And they're told, as a remedy, they're told to, move their feet more or prepare earlier. But at the top level, I mean, the top players in India will tell you this. There are times when you cannot be quick enough. There are times when no amount of early preparation will do. You're just surviving.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But what has to happen on each of those, let's say, emergency cases, is that you have to time the ball.
Right. Yeah. So basically, you have to customize according to the situation, right? I mean, you just can't.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that is why backswings and follow-throughs are basically what I call cosmetic techniques.
Mm-hmm. For example,
They should
if
all vary.
yeah, for example, if somebody's forehand like Del Potro, it comes right at your feet. You can't really have a long backswing, because you'll not have the
No.
time. You just need
No.
to, maybe use his space and give it back to him
Yes. And
with
as a
with a
coach,
shorter backswing. Yeah.
absolutely. And as a coach, if I'm training with an advanced player, and I'm telling them to get your racket back sooner on Del Potro's shot, they're going to look at me and say, really, have you played tennis before? Do you know how quick this ball is coming? So in a lot of ways, this early indoctrination of backswings and follow-throughs really hurts a player. And I would encourage a lot of players out there who are having trouble with timing the ball, then to examine where your brain goes when those balls come in deep and fast. And if it's to get that racket back quicker, then maybe you're wasting your time. There'll be, as you go up the ladder, the tennis ladder, and play better and better opponents, you may never be able to get your racket back on some balls quick enough. And of course, there will be times when you can take a full backswing and you have all the time in the world. I understand that. But if you're locked in this philosophy of backswing and follow through, you're going to be mistiming the ball quite often at a higher level. And I think what very advanced players have already discovered, maybe by themselves perhaps even, is that on some balls there is no backswing, or there is limited backswing. And the term you used was customized, that every ball must be customized. Now,
Right.
from my experience, if I take a player and I introduce this concept of ground, then my player begins to run to balls trying to create timing for that specific ball. And the cosmetic parts of backswing and follow through, the swing, for example, that comes automatically and is an adaptation from good timing. And the whole world is trying to play running in and hitting a ball in a cosmetic way, and to heck with the timing. Or the timing should be a consequence of good swing. And it is not, because timing does not produce swing.
Okay. That's a good point. Yeah.
All right, we'll move through a little bit further. I think we have some other examples coming up now.
He missed the easier
So
one.
no, on this particular example, and he'll know it himself already at this moment. What he did was he got lazy and complacent with the footwork and the setting up of ground. Now, the approach shot he hit was very much dominated by the right foot, but when he got to the service box to finish the point, he got quite lazy and used 2 feet. And nature doesn't like the source of timing coming out of both feet. It prefers it to come out of 1 foot. And we'll go over that, and you can see it now in slow motion again. So the question is, how can we harness this power and timing from the ground? What's the best way? And this is it. This is a term I call the contact foot. So we've gone through the concept of ground and its ability to supply timing and power to your shots. Now, to harness that and to perfect it, we need to start thinking about which foot we will use, because nature doesn't like both feet to be operating. Like the Andy Murray missed just a second ago. And in this case, on the right, we have Wawrinka about to come in on a low backhand topspin. And you can see his right leg is now, there's a good distance out. He's going to let his momentum take him over top of that foot to strike the ball. But it's going to come out of his right foot, this front foot. And the back foot is playing no part in this apart from balance. So we've got now a couple of, or some examples of what this looks like. So there's the back foot from Nadal. This is the wide ball, open stance from Murray. Short ball, closed stance from Wawrinka. Watch the foot in front. All the timing came from that foot.
Right, yeah. Yes.
So nature doesn't care which foot. Sorry, I'll just go back. Nature doesn't care which foot you use. It can be either foot. Okay. It doesn't care whether you're using back foot or front foot. It doesn't matter whether you're playing an open stance or a closed stance. Nature doesn't care. All it wants is for you to draw energy out of the ground to supply timing and power. So again, a lot of the teaching revolves around, getting a player to hit closed stance, particularly probably in India, where we teach players to hit closed stance first and then gravitate to other options. But in the ideal world, which I hope is coming, we will begin to give players a variety of balls right from the beginning, from 6 years old. Balls into the body that they have to cope with and create a contact foot, wide open stance, back foot, front foot, Balls coming into the forehands hit from the service box, closed stance. All these options need to be introduced right at the beginning and not left for the player to find.
Correct, yes.
All right, I'll just keep it going a wee bit. This is a ball trapping him into the body slightly, and he rocks off onto the left foot. Preparing the contact foot first. It's the catalyst for all the shot, the timing and the power. Okay, so we go now to some serve examples, and again, it doesn't change. It's a fundamental. It'll be the same theory, and it doesn't matter the styles. What you'll see is basically on all serves, the front foot is the king, and there are two types of serving styles regarding footwork. One is to bring the back foot up, excuse me, and one is to keep the back foot back. You'll see both, but in all serves, you'll see the front foot dominating. Let's have a look at that. Andre Agassi, keeping the back foot back. Federer keeps the back foot back, but dominates with his front foot.
Okay.
Nadal brings the other foot, the back foot up, but he doesn't use it much. He still dominates out of the front. Del Potro, same thing. Front foot dominates the serve. So just going back to the original theme, if it's a fundamental, it cannot be taken out. You need ground for everything. So as players begin to examine their games, examine where your mind goes to for specific shots, because if it's one of the so-called cosmetic things, it may not be doing you any good. You really need to, and this is one of my 3 technical fundamentals, but obviously it applies to every shot under every condition: back foot, front foot, open stance, closed stance, serving, overhead, volley. I mean, it just applies on every shot and creates timing and power for your shot.
True.
So yeah, that's sort of where we went with that.
Yeah, that was really enriching. Yeah. So in a nutshell, we understood that when we talk of fundamentals, of course, it's the ground that is really important, the impact with the ground, and basically, the cosmetics comes later, but it's your, your basic communication with the ground, right? Right from
yes,
be any
cosmetics.
Sports,
Cosmetics are natural. I don't think we even have to teach them.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, and hopefully we'll get the opportunity to maybe introduce the other 2 fundamentals, and you'll see that really in tennis you only need 3. That the whole game can be controlled within 3 strong fundamentals.
Yeah.
That all the rest, the so-called cosmetics, are really your signature. That's your style. I mean, if you go to, say, the AITA in Delhi,
yeah.
You'll see 100 players and not one of them hits the same forehand or backhand or serve. Everyone has their stamp on the stroke, their way of doing it. And that's what makes it a great game. But if we're teaching it, or if we want to cure issues in the game, we have to go back to the beginning, the fundamental of the stroke.
Correct. Yes. So, so Paul, obviously you've seen a lot of players. Now I'll try to bring the Indian context to it, because most of our viewers are Indians, almost 97%. So what difference do you see? I don't want to go into techniques and all that. That's the maybe at the second level. At the initial level, You have seen the coaches here. Of course, you still come to India to train the coaches here, also train a few juniors here. So what difference do you see, in terms of maybe the way they're coached here in India compared to, say, abroad? Are there any difference, if at all? And say, for example, I'm talking about fundamentals again. Or do you see the techniques? So do you see any difference in both the environment?
There is. There's many of them, but I'll start on the positive. India has such a lot of talent and always has for decades, for years. And all the time I've been watching and around Indian tournaments, the talent in India is through the roof. And not only that, players are hungry to be good. They've got great work ethic. They have respect for their coaches and the sport. And I think in that sense, we are as good as any European country in terms of the basic material that we begin with. Something happens in the years after that. Whereas in Europe, I think the systems are there that you get. I think India may have even more talent than some of the European countries. But the European countries have very good structure. And, a player who is identified early as a promising player has these structures to go through. And if they're going to be any good, they probably have a pretty good chance of reaching the top based on the structures in place. I think, Indian tennis lacks those structures. And we end up with, like a bottleneck, we have a tremendous amount of very talented young players who are great ball strikers, hardworking, respectful, all the right ingredients. But the bottleneck occurs because they can't progress their games. And even going back, in the last 10, 15 years, I was a bit more involved with, say futures level players about 10 years or so ago. So I saw a lot of those guys. They all had potential. They all worked hard. But many of them didn't really kick on from that period. And it's a real shame because it was through no lack of effort, but it was through lack of structure. And I think this is something that the Indian Tennis Association sort of needs to get their hands on and just create structures for the talented players.
True. I mean, that has been a very age-old problem in Indian tennis structure. But I think given the lack of structure, we still have a few very good players who are all on their own, so to say. But also thanks to coaches like you who still, make your way into India and try to, you all have been contributing to Indian tennis in your own ways. So thanks a lot, Paul. Thanks for your time. And yes, if you allow me, if you did like my session, we'll definitely have a few other sessions as well. And so yes, it was very.
I'd love to.
Yes.
Yeah, I'd love to come back. It was a real pleasure and a lot of fun. And I hope some of the viewers can send in some feedback. I'd love to hear some feedback.
Sure. Yes.
Even the criticism would be welcome.
Yes, definitely. So thanks a lot. It was really enriching and great insights, Paul, like as usual. Thanks a lot. And yes, see you again. Cheers.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks. Bye.